Get in the truck. Daniel Brooks said it to a woman he had never met in his life, soaking wet, shaking, sitting on a parking lot curb in the middle of a blackout storm. And he said it like he meant every single word. She stared up at him. Rain running down her face. Coat destroyed. Backpack held together with tape. "I'm not your problem," she said. "I know." He pulled the passenger door open. "Get in anyway." She got in. He had no idea who she was. He had no idea what she was running from. He had no idea that the woman he had just pulled off a concrete curb, the woman his 9-year-old daughter was handing a spare blanket to, from the back seat, was one of the wealthiest human beings in the entire Pacific Northwest. And she had given away the only food she had, to a stranger hungrier than herself. Drop your city and state in the comments right now. I want to see how far this story has traveled. And if a man like Daniel still makes you believe in something, hit subscribe. This channel is built for people like you. The storm didn't announce itself. That's the thing about the worst nights of your life, they never do. They don't send a warning. They don't knock. One minute you're driving home from the grocery store with your daughter, humming something off-key in the back seat, and the next minute the sky just opens up and drops everything it has on you at once. Daniel Brooks had lived in Millhaven, Washington long enough to know what a real Pacific Northwest winter storm felt like. He'd grown up in rain. He'd buried his wife in rain. He'd walked his daughter to school in rain so heavy it felt like the clouds were trying to press you flat into the sidewalk. Rain didn't scare him anymore. But something else did. How was gripping the steering wheel of his 12-year-old Ford F-150, a truck that had seen better days with a heater that worked only on the left side, and a passenger side window that fogged no matter what, when Lily's voice came from the back seat. "Dad?" "Yeah, Bug. That lady is still there." He didn't look. Not yet. He was pulling out of the Millhaven Foods parking lot, both hands on the wheel, both eyes watching for black ice on Route 9. Groceries in the truck bed. Milk eggs. 2 cans of soup, a box of cereal. Lily had before because it had a cartoon bear on the front. $63.40. That was what was left until Thursday. "Lots of people are still there, Lily," he said. "Stores still open." "Not inside. Outside. By the shopping carts." He looked then, and he saw her. She was sitting on the concrete curb at the far edge of the parking lot, just past the covered cart return, where the roof stopped and the rain began again. She was wearing a coat that had once been dark green, but had faded to the color of old grass. Her backpack, propped against the cart return, like a sleeping dog, was held together with what looked like electrical tape. She wasn't holding a sign. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't performing misery for passing cars, the way Daniel had seen some people do on the interstate off-ramps near Tacoma. She was just sitting there, hands in her lap, head slightly bowed, rain hitting her shoulders. "She's getting wet," Lily said. "I see that. We should help her." Daniel exhaled. He tightened his hands on the wheel. He thought about the $63. He thought about Thursday. He thought about the heating bill that was going to come due next week, and the fact that his second job at the lumberyard had cut everyone's hours because of a slow season. He thought about his daughter watching him from the back seat. 9 years old. Brown eyes that saw everything. Brown eyes that looked sometimes so much like her mother's that Daniel had to look away. He pulled back into a parking space. 5 minutes, he said. "Stay here." "Dad." "Stay here, Lily." He walked across the lot with his hood up and his shoulders hunched against the wind. The temperature had dropped maybe 15 degrees in the last 2 hours. His boots were good waterproof steel-toed, a Christmas gift from his mother-in-law 2 years ago. But the cold came up through the concrete anyway, the way cold always found a way through. She didn't look up when he stopped in front of her. "Hey," he said. "You okay?" No response. He crouched down. That put him at eye level with her, which felt important somehow, though he couldn't have explained why. She was younger than he expected, early 30s maybe. Dark hair wet and flat against her forehead. A bruise faded and yellow-green on her left cheekbone that was maybe a week old. Her eyes, when she finally looked up at him, were dark brown and completely, utterly exhausted. Not the exhaustion of a bad night's sleep. The exhaustion of someone who had been tired for months. "I'm fine," she said. Her voice was quiet but clear. No slur, no shakiness. Just flat, like someone who had stopped expecting anything from the word fine a long time ago. "You're getting soaked," Daniel said. "I know. You need food I can—" He stopped. He almost said, "I can get you something from inside," but the store was closing in 10 minutes. "I can get you something from the truck." She shook her head, just barely. "I'm okay. When's the last time you ate?" She didn't answer. That was the answer. Daniel stood up, went back to his truck, opened the passenger door, and dug through one of the grocery bags. He pulled out a container of rotisserie chicken, already cooked, still warm, $8.99, and a bottle of water. He walked back to her and held them out. She stared at them for a moment, then at him. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know," Daniel said. "Take it anyway." She took it, both hands carefully, like he was handing her something fragile. She set it in her lap and looked down at it. "Thank you," she said. Her voice had changed just slightly, like something in it had cracked open. "You have somewhere to go tonight?" he asked. "Shelter or—" "The men's shelter on Devlin Street has a bed," she said. "Women's shelter is full, has been for 3 weeks. So no." She didn't argue with that. "Can I ask your name?" Daniel said. She hesitated. A long hesitation, the kind that has weight to it. "Sophie," she said finally. "Not Sophia. Sophie." "Daniel." He stuck out his hand. She looked at it for a second, the same careful look she'd given the food, and then shook it. Her grip was firm, firmer than he expected. "All right, Sophie," he said. "You take care of yourself." He walked back to his truck. Lily was watching from the window, with both hands pressed flat against the glass. "Is she okay?" Lily asked when he got in. "She will be," Daniel said, which was not the same as yes, and both of them knew it. He started the truck, turned on the headlights, watched the windshield wipers fight the rain. Sophie was still sitting on the curb. She had set the container of chicken beside her on the ground unopened, and she was talking to someone Daniel hadn't noticed before, an elderly man sitting in a collapsed camping chair against the wall of the store, half hidden in shadow. The man had a plastic bag wrapped around his head like a makeshift hood. He was shaking. Sophie said something to him. The man shook his head. She picked up the container of chicken and held it out to him. He shook his head again. She said something else, set it gently in his lap. Then she reached into her damaged backpack and pulled out something, a small crumpled granola bar, and held it up to show the man. "See? I'm okay. I have something." The man took the chicken. Daniel had not moved the truck. His hands were still on the steering wheel. The heater was blowing on his left side only the way it always did. "Dad," Lily said softly. "She gave it away." "Yeah," Daniel said. "She did." "The food you gave her." "Yeah. She gave it to that old man." "I see that, Bug." There was a silence. The windshield wipers went back and forth. The rain got heavier. "Dad," Lily said. "What if nobody helped Mom when she needed someone?" "No, Dad." Daniel stopped breathing. That was the only way to describe it. His lungs just stopped. The words hit him somewhere behind his sternum, in the place where he had learned to pack things away so tight they couldn't touch him anymore, and they cracked something loose. What if nobody helped Mom when she needed someone? His wife Claire had grown up in foster care. She'd told him the stories, the ones she was willing to tell, winters in houses with no heat. Social workers who never came when they said they would, being invisible in the way that only truly poor children learn to be invisible. She had spent her whole childhood in the exact condition that woman on that curb was in right now, and he had driven away. He had driven 20 feet and stopped because his 9-year-old daughter, who had her mother's eyes, and it turned out her mother's soul, had said the exact words that unlocked the thing he'd been trying not to feel. He sat in the parking lot for another full minute. Then he turned the truck around. He pulled up alongside Sophie and rolled down the window. She looked up. She had the granola bar in her hand, unwrapped but not yet eaten, like she was rationing even that. "Get in the truck," Daniel said. Sophie blinked. "Excuse me?" "It's going to be a bad night. Storm's supposed to hit hard by 9. You can't stay out here." I'm not your problem. I know you're not, Daniel said. Get in the truck. She stared at him. He could see her calculating something risk probably. A woman alone being invited into a stranger's vehicle in a dark parking lot in a storm. She should say no. Any sensible person would say no. My daughter is in the back seat, Daniel said, which wasn't a credential exactly, but it was something. Her name is Lily. She's the one who told me to come back. A pause. Sophie looked past him through the truck window, and Lily waved. Just a small, steady wave with her whole hand. Something happened in Sophie's face. Something small and complicated. She stood up, picked up her backpack, walked to the passenger door, and got in. The three of them drove through the storm in a mostly quiet truck. The radio played an old country song that nobody turned off. Rain hammered the roof. The wipers worked overtime. I'm Lily, said the voice from the back seat. Sophie turned around. I know. Your dad told me. He said your name is Sophie. That's right. Do you like animals? Sophie blinked. What? Animals. We have a cat. His name is Senator because he sleeps all day and does nothing useful. Dad says that's what senators do. He's not mean or anything. The cat. I don't know about senators. Daniel pressed his lips together to keep from laughing. Sophie looked at Lily for a moment. Then slowly something changed in her face. Not a full smile. Something smaller and more fragile than that. But real. I like animals, she said. Good, Lily said. Senator will probably sit on you. I can handle that. Most people can't. He's heavy. Dad says he weighs more than a Thanksgiving turkey. 11 pounds, Daniel said. And he's still growing. He's going to be enormous, Lily said with the calm certainty of someone delivering a weather forecast. Sophie looked out the windshield at the rain. She had the backpack on her lap arms wrapped around it. But some of the tension in her shoulders that locked down braced for impact posture Daniel had noticed in the parking lot had shifted slightly. Not gone, but shifted. He had rules. He needed rules. That was how Daniel Brooks had kept his life functional after Claire died. Systems, routines, rules. Rules for the house. Rules for the school pickup schedule. Rules for money. Rules for grief, even though those ones were harder to enforce. So when they got to the house, a small 2-bedroom rancher on the edge of Millhaven with a sagging porch and a yard that needed work. Daniel never had time to do. He laid them out. Standing in the kitchen, Lily already upstairs, changing into dry clothes. Daniel put his hands on the counter and looked at Sophie, who was standing just inside the doorway, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to come in further. Ground rules, he said. Okay, she said. One night, storm passes, morning comes, you're on your way. No offense. None taken. My daughter sleeps with her door open. She's 9. She's my whole world. Anything that puts her at risk, and this is over before it starts. Understood. I'm going to need your real name, Daniel said. Not Sophie. Your name, full name, because I'm going to be sleeping 20 feet from my kid, and I need to know who's in my house. Sophie was quiet for a moment. Then, Sophie is real. It's what people call me. Is it what's on your ID? Another pause. Longer. I don't have ID on me right now, she said carefully. I lost my wallet. About 4 months ago. Daniel studied her. He had a good read on people. 20 years of working manual jobs and 2 job nights had taught him to read a room fast. She wasn't lying exactly, but she wasn't giving him everything either. There were walls behind those dark, exhausted eyes. Walls that had been built carefully with intention. You running from something? He asked. Her jaw tightened, just barely. I'm not dangerous, she said. Not to you, not to Lily. I give you my word. Is your word worth something? She met his eyes. It's the only thing I have left that's worth anything. He held her gaze for a beat, 2 beats. Bathrooms down the hall, he said. There's a towel in the closet. I'll make up the couch. He heated up the soup he'd bought at the store. Tomato, nothing fancy, and made grilled cheese sandwiches on the gas stove, the way Claire used to make them. Extra butter. Both sides pressed until they were dark gold. Sophie came out of the bathroom with her hair damp and combed back, wearing what appeared to be a clean, dry set of clothes she'd pulled from her backpack. She had changed completely efficiently without making a production of it. She stood in the kitchen doorway and watched him at the stove. "You don't have to cook for me," she said. "I was cooking anyway," he said. "Lily has to eat." "Then thank you, really. You take it black or—" He was already pouring coffee. "However it comes is fine. Sugar?" "No." He handed her a mug. She held it in both hands and breathed in the steam with the specific reverence of someone for whom a hot drink was not a casual thing. "How long?" Daniel asked. He didn't have to explain the question. "About 4 months," Sophie said. "Give or take." "Where were you before?" "Seattle." "That's not far." "No," she said. "It's not." He didn't push. He set the soup on the table. Lily came downstairs in her pajamas, the ones with the little yellow ducks on them that she was technically too old for, but refused to give up, and stopped at the bottom of the stairs when she saw Sophie at the table. "You're still here," Lily said. "I am," Sophie said. "I'm glad." Lily climbed into her chair. "Can you sit next to me?" Sophie looked at Daniel. He gave the smallest shrug. She moved her bowl and sat next to Lily. "Senator is going to find you after dinner," Lily announced. "He always comes down when he smells food. He's going to want the cheese from your sandwich." "I'll defend myself," Sophie said. "You can't," Lily said. "Nobody can. He's relentless." The cat, true to Lily's prophecy, appeared at 9:15. Enormous gray-striped, with the slow and deliberate movements of an animal that had never in his life been told no. He walked directly to Sophie, stepped onto her feet, turned 3 times, and settled into a tight, warm circle on top of her boots. Sophie looked down at him. Then she reached down and put one hand very carefully on his back. He started purring immediately. A loud industrial sound like a small engine idling. Lily, doing homework at the kitchen table with her tongue slightly out, looked up. "See?" she said. "He never does that with strangers." Daniel, washing dishes at the sink, didn't say anything, but he looked over. Sophie's hand was on the cat. Her face was turned down toward him, toward this ridiculous 11-pound animal who had chosen her without hesitation. And for just a second, her expression cracked open in a way that had nothing to do with strategy or performance or whatever walls she was holding up. She looked like someone who had been holding their breath for 4 months, and had finally, just for that one moment, been allowed to exhale. Lily went to bed at 9:30. She hugged Sophie goodnight, which Daniel had not expected and did not comment on. He brought out sheets and a pillow for the couch, which was narrow and a little saggy, but clean. "I'll be out of your way by 6, Sophie said. "Storm's still going," Daniel said. "Don't leave until you can see the roads." "I've walked in worse." "I know you have." He set the extra blanket on the couch arm. "That doesn't mean you have to." She looked at him. She had that careful look again, the one he'd seen in the parking lot in the truck at the kitchen table. The one that was always calculating, always measuring. Like someone who had learned to never fully trust a kindness, because kindnesses always came with terms. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. He'd thought about that on the drive over. He'd thought about it while he was cooking. He'd thought about it while Lily was sitting next to this stranger at his kitchen table, completely at ease, the way children were when their instincts hadn't been trained out of them yet. "Because my daughter asked me to," he said. "That's not the whole reason." "No," he said. "It's not." He looked at the window at the black rain outside. "My wife grew up in the system. Foster care, group homes, the whole thing. She used to talk about the people who helped and the people who didn't. Said you never forgot either one." Sophie said nothing. "She passed 5 years ago," Daniel said. "Lily was 4. She doesn't remember enough of her, so I try to—" He stopped, reorganized. "I try to be someone Claire would recognize," he said. "Someone Lily can point to later and say that's how he was. That's why." Sophie was quiet for a very long moment. "I'm sorry," she said. "About your wife." "She was something," Daniel said. "She really was." He said goodnight. He went down the hall to his room. He lay on his back in the dark and listened to the storm outside. He did not sleep for a long time. At 2 in the morning, he heard sounds from the kitchen. He got up quietly, the way you learn to move in a house with a sleeping child, and walked down the hall in his socks. Sophie was at the kitchen sink. She was washing every dish in the drying rack, the ones that were already clean, with the methodical, almost compulsive thoroughness of someone whose hands needed to be doing something. The dishes were already clean. She was washing them again. She heard him come in and stopped. "Sorry," she said. "I couldn't sleep. I needed—" She gestured at the sink. "I needed to do something. You don't have to clean my house." "I know," she said. "I wanted to." He looked at her. She was wearing a slightly oversized gray sweater pulled from the backpack apparently, and her feet were bare on the kitchen tile. The overhead light was off. She'd turned on just the small light over the stove, the one they used at night, so Lily could get a glass of water without waking anyone up. In that light she looked younger, and much more tired, and absolutely nothing like a homeless stranger he'd found in a parking lot 3 hours ago. She looked like someone who had once upon a time been very much at home in a kitchen, moving with an ease and an efficiency that was too practiced to be accidental. "You know what you're doing," he said. She looked at him. "In a kitchen," he clarified. "I used to cook," she said. "A long time ago, before I had people to cook for me." He registered that. Before I had people to cook for me. Not before I could afford to eat. Not before things got bad. The phrasing of someone who had at some point had a staff. He filed it away. "Go to sleep, Sophie," he said. "The couch is yours. The dishes aren't going anywhere." She dried her hands on the kitchen towel, folded it neatly over the oven handle, turned off the stove light. "Daniel," she said. "Yeah. You're a good man." I didn't know what to do with that, so he just went back to bed. Morning came gray and quiet. The storm burned out overnight, the streets wet and silver in the early light. Daniel made coffee at 5:30, the way he always did, 2 cups before he remembered there was a third person in the house. He made 3. When he came down the hall with Lily stopping to knock on her door, Lilybug 6 o'clock, he found the couch already made. Sheets folded. Blanket folded on top of them, neat as a hospital bed. Pillow stacked precisely. Senator was sitting on top of the pillow, blinking slowly at nothing. Sophie was in the kitchen. She had made breakfast. Scrambled eggs, real ones, not the ones he usually made, which came out a little rubbery, with a precision he'd never quite managed. Toast, perfectly browned. Lily's orange juice already poured. The kitchen clean and organized in a way it hadn't been when he went to sleep. "You didn't have to," he started. "I used your last 4 eggs," she said. "I'll replace them." "Sophie, I'm not worried about—" "I'll replace them," she said again, and something in her voice was quiet but firm, in a way that didn't invite argument. She needed to replace them. It was important to her. He didn't know why, but he understood that it was. "Fine," he said. "Lily takes her toast dark, right?" Sophie asked. "I guessed." "Yeah, she does," Daniel said slowly. "How did you—" "She ate around the edges last night and left the pale parts. Kids who like dark toast always do that." He stared at her. She poured him a coffee and slid it across the counter. "Milk, no sugar," she said. "I guessed that too." He picked up the mug. "You guess a lot." "I observe a lot," she said, and turned back to the stove. "There's a difference." Lily came downstairs and immediately threw herself into the nearest chair when she saw the eggs. "You made real eggs," she said. "Your father had the ingredients," Sophie said. "Dad's eggs are like rubber. No offense, Dad." "Deep offense taken," Daniel said. "These are amazing," Lily said through a mouthful. "You should stay." A silence. Sophie glanced at Daniel. He looked at his coffee. "I have places to be," Sophie said. "Like where?" Lily asked with the bluntness of 9-year-olds who have not yet learned that some questions you don't ask. "Lily," Daniel started. "I have some things I have to figure out," Sophie said. She said it gently, directly, with none of the deflection or evasion of someone caught in an uncomfortable question. "But I'm not in a hurry this morning. Is that okay?" Lily considered this. Do you want to watch Senator try to eat my toast? That sounds like the most important thing I've had to do in weeks, Sophie said. And Lily laughed a big full laugh that bounced off the kitchen walls, and Daniel watched this woman he had found on a parking lot curb the night before make his daughter laugh, and he felt something complicated and difficult turn over slowly in his chest. At 8 o'clock, Sophie shouldered her backpack. The morning was cold, but clear. The storm gone, the streets washed clean. Lily was already at the table doing a worksheet for school Senator draped over her feet like a fur rug. Sophie stopped at the door, turned back. Thank you, she said, for all of it. You're welcome, Daniel said. I mean it, not just the food or the couch. She paused. You didn't treat me like a problem to be managed. You treated me like a person. A beat. That's rarer than it should be. Shouldn't be rare at all, Daniel said. She smiled at that. A real one this time, brief, and a little heartbreaking. She opened the door. Sophie, Lily called from the kitchen table. Sophie looked back. Come back and see Senator sometime, Lily said. He likes you better than most people. He told me. Sophie's smile did something complicated. When did he tell you that? This morning, Lily said. He was sitting on your blanket and looking satisfied. That means he approves. Sophie stood in the doorway for a moment. The morning light was behind her. I'll do my best, she said. She walked out. Daniel stood at the window and watched her go down the front walk through the gate, turning right on Millhaven Street, her damaged backpack over her shoulder, her green coat a moving point against the washed pale sidewalk. She walked without looking back. I didn't know why he expected anything different. He didn't know her last name. He didn't have a number for her. He didn't know where she went when she turned right on Millhaven Street, or where she'd come from, or what she was running from, or why a woman that sharp, that observant, that precise, that quietly extraordinary was sitting on a curb in a rainstorm with a backpack held together with electrical tape. He only knew what Lily had said at breakfast, still half asleep, face in her eggs. She's not like anybody I've ever met, Dad. He'd wanted to tell his daughter that sometimes people are more than they appear, that sometimes a rainstorm brings the strangest gifts, that sometimes you don't know what you're doing when you turn your truck around in the dark. He'd wanted to say all of that. Instead, he'd just poured her more orange juice and said, finish your worksheet, bug. But he'd thought it, and he would keep thinking it for a long time. What? Daniel didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have known, standing at that window, watching Sophie Reynolds walk away, was that she had not slept at all that night. Not because of the unfamiliar couch or the storm outside or the stranger's house, but because for the first time in 4 months she had felt safe. And safety after that long without it was its own kind of unbearable. She walked 3 blocks before she stopped, stood on the sidewalk in the pale morning light with her backpack straps in both hands. And for the first time since the night everything fell apart, Sophia Reynolds cried. She walked 3 blocks before she stopped. That was all she managed. 3 blocks from Daniel Brooks's front door in the pale gray light of a morning that smelled like wet concrete and pine, and her legs just quit. Not from exhaustion, not from the cold. She stopped because for the first time in 4 months, someone had treated her like she was worth something, and the weight of that, the sheer crushing weight of being seen, hit her somewhere behind the ribs and wouldn't let go. Sophia Reynolds stood on that sidewalk with both hands gripping her backpack straps, and she cried. Not the quiet, controlled kind of crying she had allowed herself in parking garages and church doorways over the past 4 months. This was different. This came from somewhere deeper. This was the sound a person makes when they have been holding their breath so long they forgot what air felt like, and then someone simply handed it back to them without asking for anything in return. A man she had known for less than 12 hours had opened his door. His daughter had handed her a blanket. His cat had slept on her feet. And nobody had wanted anything from her. Not her name, not her money, not her signature or her silence or her cooperation. Just nothing. Just a couch and scrambled eggs and a little girl saying, "Come back and see Senator sometime." She stood there for 2 full minutes. Then she wiped her face with the back of her hand, adjusted the backpack straps, and kept walking. Because Sophia Reynolds had not survived 4 months on the streets of the Pacific Northwest by standing still and feeling things. She had survived by moving, by staying one step ahead of the people looking for her, by being invisible in the places where invisibility kept her safe. But something had shifted this morning. Something small and dangerous. She had let herself feel safe, even for one night, and now she had to remember why that was a problem. The people looking for her were not going to stop. They had too much to lose. Marcus Hale, her chief operating officer, and the man she had trusted with the operational spine of Reynolds Global Holdings for 6 years, had made that perfectly clear in the last phone call they'd had before she disappeared. He hadn't shouted. Marcus never shouted. He had simply said in that quiet boardroom voice of his, "Sophia, you need to understand what happens if you try to fight this publicly." And she had understood. She had understood that the man she had mentored, promoted and defended in 3 separate board challenges, had spent the last 18 months systematically dismantling her control of her own company, and that he had the signatures of 7 board members to back him up, and that every attorney she might have called was either already on his payroll or afraid of becoming a problem for him. She had understood all of that. So she had run. Not because she was weak. People who thought Sophia Reynolds ran because she was weak did not understand the first thing about her. She ran because running was tactical. Because disappearing was the one move none of them had anticipated. Because you cannot fight a battle when your enemy controls every resource, every communication channel, and every ally you thought you had, and the only thing you have left is the element of surprise. So she had run. She had taken nothing that could be traced. No credit cards. No phone registered in her name. No car. She had become deliberately and methodically a woman with no footprint. What she had not anticipated was 4 months of it. What she had not anticipated was what 4 months of invisibility does to a person who has spent her entire adult life being the most visible woman in every room. She turned left on Cascade Avenue and walked toward the bus depot, which had a covered waiting area where she could sit without being moved along. She needed to think. She needed a plan. She had been running on instinct and improvisation for weeks, and while she was good at both, she could feel the edges of herself starting to fray. She was almost at the depot when she heard the car. Not a sound most people would have noticed. Just a car slowing, on a public street, happening all the time everywhere. But Sophia had spent 4 months learning to hear things that most people edited out, and the specific sound of a luxury vehicle, reducing speed, that almost imperceptible whisper-smooth deceleration that only happened with high-end suspension systems landed in her nervous system like an alarm. She did not look. Looking was the worst thing she could do. Instead, she turned sharply left, cut between 2 parked trucks, and walked into the narrow alley between a dry cleaner and a hardware store, as if she had always been going that way. She pressed her back against the brick wall and listened. The car stopped. A door opened. Footsteps. 2 sets. Unhurried but purposeful. Then, a voicemail carrying the particular professional flatness of someone paid to be neutral said, "She was in this area as of last night. Manager at the grocery store confirmed the description." Another voice. "Nobody took her in. Nobody we've found yet." Sophia stopped breathing. They had tracked her to the grocery store, which meant they had footage, which meant they knew she had been here in Millhaven on this side of town. They just didn't know where she had spent the night, which meant Daniel's house was still safe, which meant she needed to make sure it stayed that way. She waited 4 full minutes. Then she moved deeper into the alley out the other end, north on the parallel street, away from the depot and away from the direction she'd come from. She walked fast, head down hood, up the way she'd learned. She put 6 blocks between herself and that car before she allowed herself to breathe normally again. Then she stopped at a payphone, one of about a dozen left in Millhaven, which was the specific kind of small town that still had payphones, which was part of why she'd come here and made a call. It rang 4 times. "Yeah." The voice on the other end was gruff, cautious, and very much awake for 6:30 in the morning. "It's me," Sophia said. A pause. "You're still alive." "Disappointed." "Relieved," said Walter Hayes. "Where are you?" "Millhaven. They're here, Walter. 2 of Hale's people at least. They tracked me to a grocery store. How close? 6 blocks, maybe less. She kept her voice level. Years of board meetings had trained her to keep her voice level under conditions that would have cracked most people open. I need you to check something for me, quietly. When have I ever done anything loudly? Walter said. What do you need? I need to know if anyone filed the emergency restructuring motion yet, Sophia said. Hale said he'd wait until January. I need to know if that's still true, or if he moved the timeline. Walter was quiet for a moment. She could hear him moving the particular sounds of a man in his 60s getting up from a chair. Give me 2 hours, he said. I'll check through the back channels. 2 hours, she said. Thank you, Walter. Sophie. He used that name the way Daniel had not her full name, not the corporate version, just the shorter thing that felt more human. Are you okay? Not operationally, you. Are you okay? She opened her mouth to say yes, the automatic yes, the one she had been saying for 4 months. I slept on a couch last night, she said instead. A stranger's couch. He found me in a parking lot, and he made me eggs in the morning, and his daughter told me his cat approved of me. Walter was quiet. So no, she said. I'm not okay, but I think I might be getting there. She hung up. She walked back toward the north end of town. She was trying to map her next move when she heard very distinctly the sound of a child's voice behind her saying, Sophie. She turned around. Lily Brooks was standing on the sidewalk in her school backpack and her yellow duck pajama pants tucked into rain boots, apparently having left the house in such a hurry that she had not finished getting dressed, holding out a paper bag with both hands. Sophia stared at her. Lily, what are you doing out here? I saw you from the window, Lily said. You forgot your lunch. Sophia looked at the paper bag. Lily, I don't have a lunch. You do now. I made you a sandwich. Lily pushed the bag toward her. Dad taught me. It's peanut butter and honey because we were out of jelly. And there's an apple. Senator tried to sit on the apple, but I stopped him. Sophia took the bag. She looked at it for a moment. A small brown paper bag with the top folded down the way you folded a lunch bag when you were 9 years old and had learned this specific skill from a parent and were now applying it with total seriousness to a near stranger on a public sidewalk. Does your dad know you're out here? Sophia asked. Lily's expression shifted slightly. He's in the shower. Lily. I left him a note. What does the note say? It says back in 5 minutes, Senator is fine. Despite everything, despite the car 6 blocks back, and Marcus Hale's people, and the payphone, and the 4 months of running. Sophia felt the corner of her mouth pull upward. That's not actually what I asked. I know, Lily said. But he would have said no. He would have been right. Maybe, Lily said. But you still needed your lunch. She paused. Are you going to be okay? The question landed with the complete and devastating simplicity that only children managed. No qualifier, no softening, no careful phrasing designed to leave the person an exit. Just are you going to be okay straight at the center of the thing, the way 9-year-olds aimed everything right at whatever they could see most clearly. I'm working on it, Sophia said. Lily nodded. Like that was an acceptable answer. Like she had heard that particular answer before from a person she loved and had learned to trust it. Okay, she said. The apple is a Honeycrisp. They're the best kind. They are, Sophia agreed. You know a lot about apples for a person who's having a hard time. I know a lot about a lot of things, Sophia said. That's actually part of the problem. Lily thought about that for a second. Then she pointed at the bag. There's a note inside too, from me. You don't have to read it right now. Okay. But read it today. I will. Lily looked at her for one more moment with those brown eyes that saw straight through everything, and then she said, Okay, I have to go before Dad gets out of the shower, or he's going to be really upset with me. Bye, Sophie. Bye, Lily. She turned and ran back toward the house. Sophia watched her go, this small, fast-moving person in rain boots and duck pajamas, who had made her a sandwich and tracked her down on a public street because she hadn't wanted her to go hungry. Sophia looked down at the paper bag. She opened the top fold carefully. Peanut butter and honey sandwich wrapped in a paper towel. Honeycrisp apple. And underneath, folded into a small rectangle, a piece of notebook paper, the wide-ruled kind, the kind 9-year-olds used. She unfolded it. In large, careful handwriting with a drawing of a cat in the corner that could only be Senator Lily Brooks had written, "I think you are a good person who is having bad luck. My dad says the two things are not the same. He says good people can have really bad luck, and it doesn't make them less good. I think he is right. I hope things get better for you soon. Senator hopes so too. He doesn't say much, but he showed me." Lily and Senator. Sophia folded the note back up, put it in her coat pocket, put her hand flat over the pocket over the place where the note was, and stood on the sidewalk in the pale morning light. Then she picked up the apple and bit into it. It was as advertised, a Honeycrisp, the best kind. She walked north and let herself, just for a few minutes, feel something other than afraid. It lasted until she turned the corner onto Birch Street and saw the second car. This one was parked, not moving. Black. The windows tinted to the legal maximum. It was outside the Millhaven Coffee House, engine running, which meant either someone was waiting, or someone was watching, or both. The plates were King, Seattle, and in the front seat, she could see the outline of a man in a dark jacket, with the specific posture of someone who was not inside getting coffee. She turned right immediately. New direction. New pace. She kept her head down and counted her breaths the way she'd taught herself to, in for 4, out for 4, because panic was the enemy of thinking, and right now she needed to think. They were tightening. She had been in Millhaven too long. One night had become a risk. A known risk, identifiable, traceable, and now apparently traced. She needed to move. She needed to move today, if not this morning, and she needed to do it without leaving a thread that led back to a small rancher house on Millhaven Street, with a single father and a girl in duck pajamas and a cat named Senator. She needed to disappear again. The thought made something in her chest close up like a fist. She had not realized until this exact moment how much she had not wanted to do that. She pulled out the payphone number she had memorized for Walter and changed direction again, heading for the drugstore on 5th Street that had a payphone outside its north entrance. She needed to know about the restructuring motion. She needed to know if Hale had moved his timeline, because if he had filed early, everything changed. If he had already filed, she had days instead of weeks, and the entire sequence of what she had been planning, the careful, methodical counterattack she had been building in her head for 4 months, compressed into something she would have to execute faster and with fewer resources than she'd calculated. She was 2 blocks from the drugstore when her foot caught on a cracked section of sidewalk. She went down hard. Both knees, one hand. The backpack swung forward and hit the ground, and she heard something inside it. Crack, small ceramic, something she had been carrying since the 2nd week, a coffee mug from a shelter in Tacoma that a volunteer had let her keep because she'd said it was the only thing that felt like hers. She sat on the sidewalk for a moment, both knees stinging, palm scraped, the mug probably broken. A man walking past stopped. Mid-50s flannel shirt, good boots. He looked down at her with the particular careful expression of a man trying to assess a situation before he committed to it. "You okay?" he asked. Sophia Reynolds, formerly the chief executive officer of a $4 billion technology company, sat on a cracked Millhaven sidewalk with scraped palms and a broken mug in her backpack and looked up at a stranger who was trying to decide if she was worth stopping for. "I'm fine," she said. "You sure that was a hard fall?" "I'm sure, thank you." He nodded, satisfied, and walked on. She got up, dusted off her knees, kept moving. But somewhere in the 10 seconds she had been sitting on that sidewalk, something had clicked into place. Not a plan exactly, more like the beginning of a plan. The first piece of a sequence she hadn't been able to see clearly until right now on this sidewalk in this small town, with a peanut butter and honey sandwich in a paper bag and a note from a 9-year-old in her pocket. She knew what she needed. She didn't need more time to hide. She needed one person, one single person outside the company, outside the legal and financial world. Marcus Hale had spent 18 months walling off around her who she could trust to carry one document to one attorney without being intercepted. She needed a courier. Not a professional one. A professional courier could be bought. She needed someone who had nothing to gain from delivering the document wrong. Someone with no stake in Reynolds Global Holdings. Someone who would carry it not for money, but because they had already demonstrated without anyone asking them to that they were exactly that kind of person. She stood on the corner of 5th and Cascade for 30 seconds. Then she turned around and walked back toward Millhaven Street. She was going back to Daniel Brooks's house. Not to ask for a favor. Not to pull a good man into something dangerous. She was going back to tell him the truth because he deserved it before she asked anything of him, and because whatever he decided after hearing it, at least it would be his decision. A real one. Made with real information. The kind of choice you could respect regardless of which way it went. She knocked on his door at 7:45 in the morning. She heard movement inside. Then the door opened and Daniel was there. Work clothes, coffee mug in hand. Expression shifting rapidly from surprise to something more complicated when he saw her standing on his porch. "I thought you left," he said. "I did," she said. "I came back." "Why?" She looked at him. This man who had turned his truck around in a storm, who had made 3 cups of coffee in the morning because he'd remembered she was there, who had told her quietly in his kitchen at midnight that he was trying to be someone his daughter could point to later and say, that's how he was. "Because I owe you the truth," she said. "And because I need your help. And I'm not going to ask you for help without giving you the truth first." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. He was reading her the way he had in the kitchen last night, that steady working man assessment, looking for what was real and what wasn't. "You better come in," he said. She came in. He put a fresh cup of coffee in front of her. He sat across the kitchen table from her. Lily was at school. Senator was somewhere upstairs, visible only as a distant rhythmic thumping that meant he was doing something inadvisable to a piece of furniture. Daniel put his hands around his mug and looked at her and waited. "My name isn't just Sophie," she said. "It's Sophia. Sophia Reynolds." He didn't react to the name. She hadn't expected him to. Millhaven was not the kind of town that tracked the movements of technology executives. But he was listening with every part of himself the way some people did when they knew the next thing they heard was going to matter. "I run a company," she said. "Or I did. Reynolds Global Holdings. About $4 billion in assets, offices in 12 countries, roughly 6,000 employees." She paused. "Ran. 6 months ago, the people I trusted most in the world decided I was more valuable gone than present. My chief operating officer spent 18 months building a coalition on my board, moving my own people, replacing them with his. When I found out, I had maybe 48 hours before he locked me out completely, so I ran." Daniel was very still. "Not because I gave up," she said, and she needed him to hear, that clearly needed it the way she needed air. "Because running was the only move he wouldn't be ready for. If I disappeared, he couldn't legally restructure the company without triggering a series of provisions that require a 90-day discovery period. I bought myself 90 days by vanishing." "It's been 4 months," Daniel said. His attorneys found a way to extend the discovery period. He's been buying time. I've been buying time. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, I ended up in Millhaven with electrical tape on my backpack and a granola bar I gave to an old man because he looked worse off than me." She wrapped both hands around the coffee mug. "They're here, Daniel. 2 of his cars at least in this town this morning. They tracked me to the grocery store from last night." Daniel's jaw tightened. "They know you were here. They know I was in this area. They don't know about this house. Yet." She looked at him directly. "I need you to know that. I would not be here if I thought they knew about this house. But they could find out." "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. "What do you need?" "1 document," she said. "I have it in my bag. I've been carrying it for 2 months, waiting for the right moment and the right person. It's an affidavit signed, notarized, legally complete, laying out everything Hale did with the evidence attached. Bank transfers, communication records, a recording of a board meeting he didn't know I had access to. Everything." She kept her voice even. If that document reaches Richard Ellison, an attorney in Portland, it triggers an emergency injunction that freezes the restructuring. I cannot send it electronically. Hale has people monitoring every digital channel. I cannot send it through a courier service. Every courier company in the Pacific Northwest has someone on his payroll. I need a person, a private person with no connection to my company, who can drive to Portland and hand-deliver an envelope to one attorney. Daniel looked at the table, then at her. Portland is 3 hours from here. I know. I have a job. I know. I have a kid. I know, Daniel. I know all of that. And I am asking you anyway because I don't have anyone else, and because I think you are exactly the kind of person who, if I told you that 6,000 people's jobs and livelihoods were currently sitting on a knife edge because one man decided greed was more important than integrity. She stopped herself, started again quieter. I'm asking because you turned your truck around, she said. That's it. That's why I'm asking you and not anyone else. Because you turned your truck around when you didn't have to. Silence. The house settled around them. Upstairs, Senator thudded from one piece of furniture to another. Daniel looked at his coffee. He turned the mug in a slow circle on the table, the way he'd done in the kitchen last night. She'd noticed it then, that particular habit, the physical thinking. This attorney, he said. He's expecting it. I reached him through a back channel 3 weeks ago. He's waiting. And if Hale's people stop me, the document is in a padded envelope addressed to Ellison's office. It looks like any legal correspondence. There's no way for them to know what it is without opening it, and if they open attorney correspondence, they've committed a federal crime. She paused. But I won't lie to you. If they figure out who you are and where you came from, they will try to use it. They are not good people, Daniel. They will leverage whatever they can find. Like a single father with a 9-year-old, Daniel said. She held his gaze. Yes. And you're telling me that? I told you I'd give you the truth first. Howe was quiet for a long time. Long enough that she started to frame the words she would use when he said no, because he had every reason in the world to say no, because she had just sat in his kitchen and told him that helping her might put him and his daughter in the crosshairs of a man with essentially unlimited resources and zero ethical constraints. My daughter's at school until 3:15, Daniel said. Her breath caught. My buddy Frank owes me a shift. I could call in the favor. He looked at her. Hand deliver to Ellison. Come straight back. Yes, she said. That's all. And this ends it. This stops what he's doing. It starts a process that stops what he's doing, she said. It buys enough time for the full legal process to work. It's not a magic bullet, but it's the first real move in a game where I've been playing defense for 6 months. He stood up, picked up his phone, dialed a number. Frank, he said. Yeah, I need to call in that favor, today. Can you cover my morning at the yard? A pause. Yeah, I know it's short notice. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Another pause. Thanks, man. I owe you one. He hung up, looked at her. Go get your document, he said. Sophia reached into her backpack. She pulled out a sealed padded envelope that had been wrapped in a waterproof sleeve tucked into a false bottom she'd created with a piece of cardboard and duct tape. She had been carrying it for 63 days. Through 3 states and 11 cities and 4 months of being no one. She put it on the kitchen table between them. Daniel looked at it, then at her. One more thing, he said. What? When this is over, he said, whatever that looks like, you're going to tell me the whole story, every piece of it. Not because I need to know, but because I think you haven't told the whole story to anyone in a long time, and I think that's part of what's been breaking you. Sophia Reynolds sat across the table from a man who worked 2 jobs and drove a truck with a broken heater and had turned around in a storm for a stranger, and she felt something shift in her chest that had not moved in a very long time. Okay, she said. Deal. He picked up his keys. Lock up when you leave, he said. Senator gets nervous when he's alone, and he'll knock things off the counter. I'll stay until you're back, she said. He stopped in the doorway. You don't have to do that. I know, she said. I want to. He nodded and walked out. She sat at his kitchen table with her hands around a coffee mug and listened to his truck start in the driveway and pull out onto Millhaven Street and drive away into a morning that was cold and clear and full of things that had not yet been decided. Then she reached into her coat pocket and took out Lily's note. She read it again. Good people can have really bad luck, and it doesn't make them less good. She folded it carefully and put it back. Upstairs, Senator made a sound like a very small avalanche and then went quiet. She was still sitting there 2 hours later when her payphone contact number buzzed through a message on the emergency channel. Walter had set up 2 words in the code they had arranged. She read them, and her blood went cold. He filed. Marcus Hale had moved the timeline. The emergency restructuring motion had been filed that morning at 8 a.m. in King County Superior Court. Not January. Today. Which meant the 90-day window she had been counting on had just collapsed into something far shorter. Which meant Daniel needed to reach Portland. Not tomorrow, not this afternoon, but before 5 p.m. today, when the court offices closed, and Ellison's window to file the counter-injunction would snap shut until Monday morning, and by Monday morning, it would be too late. She grabbed her coat and ran out the door. She had to reach Daniel. She ran 3 blocks before she realized she had no way to reach him. No phone number. No radio. Nothing. Daniel Brooks had driven away in a 12-year-old Ford F-150 toward Portland, Oregon, with a padded envelope and a borrowed favor, and absolutely no idea that the timeline had just collapsed under both of them, like a floor giving way. She stood on the sidewalk outside his house with her hand pressed flat against her coat pocket, and thought very clearly that she had made a catastrophic mistake by not exchanging contact information, and that this was exactly the kind of detail that separated people who survived from people who didn't, and that she had somehow in the space of one morning gotten sloppy enough to miss it. She went back inside. She stood in Daniel's kitchen and forced herself to breathe and think instead of panic and react, because panic was what Marcus Hale was counting on. Panic was what made people move fast and think slow and hand their enemies exactly the opening they needed. She looked at the clock on the microwave. 8:52 in the morning. Court offices in Portland closed at 5. Drive time from Millhaven was 3 hours minimum more with traffic, which meant Daniel had a window, but it was closing fast, and she had no way to tell him to push the accelerator and not stop for anything. She looked around this kitchen. Daniel was orderly in the specific way of people who couldn't afford disorder. Everything in its place. Everything with a purpose. She opened the drawer next to the stove because kitchens always had a junk drawer, and junk drawers always had something useful. Rubber bands, a screwdriver, 3 dead pens, 2 working ones, a notepad with a grocery list in Daniel's handwriting, milk bread, the cereal. Lily wants paper towels and a business card. She picked up the business card. Frank Delorio, Millhaven Building Supply. On the back in pencil, the cell number. Frank. The buddy Daniel had called to cover his shift. She looked at the number for 2 seconds. Then she went to the landline phone on the counter. Daniel still had a landline because of course he did, because he had a 9-year-old and a working man's distrust of things that could die when the power went out, and dialed. It rang twice. "Yeah, Frank," she said. "My name is Sophie. I was staying with Daniel Brooks. He just left for Portland. It's an emergency, and I need you to reach him right now." A pause. "Who is this again?" "Sophie. I was at his house last night. He helped me out of a situation. I need you to call him on his cell and tell him to push the drive. Do not stop. The window closes at 5, and he needs to get there by 4:30 at the latest. Can you do that right now?" Another pause. Longer. She could hear Frank working through whether this was real or some kind of angle, and she didn't have time to be patient with it. But she also knew that pushing harder would make him dig in, so she waited. "Daniel doesn't bring people home," Frank said slowly. "He's real private about that, about Lily." "I know," she said. "He told me that himself. He also told me his wife grew up in foster care and that he tries to be someone she would recognize. He said it at midnight in his kitchen while I was washing dishes I'd already washed because I didn't know what else to do with myself." She paused. "I think that's specific enough to tell you I was actually there." A beat. Then Frank said, "Hold on. and she heard him dialing. She gripped the counter with her free hand and waited. Senator appeared from somewhere and walked across the kitchen floor and sat on her feet, staring up at her with yellow eyes. "Line's busy," Frank said. "He might be in a dead zone out past Miller Creek. Signal drops there." "Keep trying," she said. "Please, every 5 minutes until he picks up. Tell him 4:30. Tell him don't stop." "Okay," Frank said. "Okay, I'll keep trying." She hung up. She looked at the clock. 8:58. She did the math again. If Daniel was already past Miller Creek and in the dead zone, he was maybe 40 minutes out of Millhaven, which put him 2 hours and 20 minutes from Portland, which was fine, which was survivable, except that she had no confirmation and no control, and nothing to do but sit in this man's kitchen and trust a chain of people she had known for less than 24 hours. She sat down. Senator climbed into her lap with the complete confidence of an animal who had decided this was his right. She put her hand on his back, and he started that loud industrial purr. She thought about Marcus Hale. She thought about the morning she had found the first file. She had been in the office at 5 a.m., the way she always was, because Sophia Reynolds had been arriving at the office at 5 a.m. since she was 27 years old, and had decided that the difference between her and every other person in the room was going to be the 3 hours she put in before anyone else got there. She had been reviewing quarterly projections when she'd noticed a discrepancy in the subsidiary reporting. Small, the kind of thing that would have slipped past 98% of people. But Sophia Reynolds had built this company from a $40,000 personal loan and a rented desk, and she knew every number in every file the way a carpenter knew the grain of their wood. She had pulled the thread, and the thread had unraveled something enormous. Marcus had been redirecting company revenue carefully, slowly, in increments small enough to avoid triggering automatic audit flags, into a holding structure he'd built over 18 months. Parallel board votes conducted through proxies. Employment contracts rewritten without her signature. 3 senior VPs she'd trusted completely had been converted. Each of them handed equity packages that vested only if the restructuring went through. He had been patient and meticulous and had made exactly one mistake. He had underestimated how early she woke up. She had spent 48 hours verifying everything before she told a single person. Because she had learned in 20 years of business that the most dangerous moment was not when you found out you'd been betrayed. The most dangerous moment was the 10 seconds after you found out, when everything in you wanted to confront and accuse and demand. And the smart thing, the winning thing, was to go very, very quiet. She had gone quiet. She had made copies of everything, notarized an affidavit through an attorney she trusted in Denver, assembled the full evidentiary package, and then she had done the one thing Marcus had never anticipated in any of his planning. She had vanished. And now she was sitting in a stranger's kitchen in a small town in Washington with a cat in her lap, and the man she had chosen out of everyone in the world to carry the document that ended it was driving through a cell dead zone in a 12-year-old truck, and she had $17.40 in her coat pocket, and the clock on the microwave said 9:04. The landline rang. She grabbed it before the first ring finished. "Yes, it's Frank. I got him. He's past the dead zone. He's on 14 South. I told him 4:30 and don't stop. He said..." A pause, like Frank was reading from a note. "He said, tell her I'm already doing 80, and I don't want to hear about it." Something in Sophia's chest loosened by about 3 degrees. "Thank you, Frank. Thank you." "Is he in some kind of trouble?" Frank asked. "Because Daniel's a good man and he doesn't deserve..." "He's not in trouble," she said. "He's helping someone who is, and he's going to be fine." She said it with the complete, deliberate certainty she had used in 100 board meetings to walk people back from the edge of panic. Whether she believed it fully herself was a separate question. "He's going to be fine." "Okay," Frank said. "Okay, you call me if anything changes." "I will." She put the phone down. Senator readjusted in her lap and went back to his industrial purring. She sat. She thought. She made herself eat half the peanut butter sandwich she'd been carrying since Lily handed her the paper bag, because she'd learned the hard way that your brain stopped working correctly when it was running on nothing, and she needed her brain working correctly right now. At 9:45, the sound she had been dreading came. A car slowing. Outside. Not a neighbor. She knew what neighbor traffic sounded like in a residential street, the casual approach and park of someone who lived nearby, the rhythm of a familiar route. This was different. This was the deliberate pace of a vehicle performing a visual sweep. She moved, fast without noise. Off the chair. Senator displaced and irritated across the kitchen and into the hallway, pressing her back against the wall where she was invisible from the front windows. She held still. She breathed. The car stopped outside. Doors. One set. Single person. Footsteps on the porch. A knock. She did not move. She did not breathe. She counted seconds the way she'd taught herself, 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, and let the knock go unanswered. A pause. Then the sound of something against the door frame. Not the handle. A different contact higher, and she knew from 3 months of being hunted that someone was pressing a business card into the doorframe. Not slipping it under the door, which suggested they didn't actually know who lived here yet. Just leaving something for whoever answered. Footsteps back down the porch. Car door. Engine. The specific smooth acceleration of a luxury vehicle. Gone. She waited a full 3 minutes. Then she went to the front door and opened it 2 inches. A business card held in the doorframe by being pressed against the strike plate. She took it. Read it. Marcus Hale's corporate office, Seattle. No personal name. On the back in neat printed handwriting. We know you're in this area. It doesn't have to be difficult. Call. She put the card in her pocket. They knew she was in Millhaven. They had narrowed it to this street or close to it. They didn't know this specific house yet, but the radius was tightening, and radius math was not on her side. She had hours, not days. She had to be gone before Lily came home at 3:15. That was the only thing she was certain of. Whatever happened, whatever the next move was, it could not involve Lily Brooks walking into a situation that Sophia had dragged through her father's front door. She went back to the kitchen. She sat. She thought. And then the second message came through the emergency channel, and it was not from Walter. The number was one she recognized. She had memorized it 6 months ago, and prayed she would never need it, and the message was 3 words. He knows Daniel. She stared at the message for 4 seconds. Then she grabbed the landline and called Frank again. Frank, call Daniel back, right now. Tell him. She stopped. Thought. If Hale's people were monitoring communication channels, a direct warning over a phone line Frank had already used could give them Daniel's number. She changed course in real time. Tell him to stop at the rest area at exit 44 on I-5. Tell him I said the coffee there is better. He'll understand. That's some kind of code, Frank said. Just tell him, she said. Exit 44 rest area. Coffee is better. Okay, calling now. She hung up. She looked at the clock. 10:17. She had no idea if Daniel would understand. She had no idea if the rest area at exit 44 was even a safe contact point. She was improvising now, which meant she was past the boundary of her plan and into the territory where everything depended on instinct and other people's willingness to trust her. She hated this territory. She had spent her entire career eliminating this territory. She put on her coat, picked up her backpack, left the key on the kitchen table where Daniel would find it. She wrote one line on the grocery notepad, exit 44. The coffee is better, and put it under Senator's water bowl, where it would be visible, but not immediately obvious. Then she picked up her backpack, and she walked out of Daniel Brooks's house for the second time that morning. The difference was that this time, she didn't let herself look back. She moved north away from the route Hale's car had taken, working through the residential streets in a pattern that avoided her previous route. She needed to get to the north edge of Millhaven, to the bus route that ran along the highway to a payphone she hadn't used yet. She needed to reach Walter and find out what he knows Daniel actually meant, and whether it meant what she was afraid it meant. She found the payphone outside a laundromat on North Cascade at 10:41. She dialed Walter's number. He picked up on the first ring. Where are you? Moving. What does he know? Hale's people pulled the gas station footage from Route 9, Walter said, and his voice had the particular flat quality it got when the news was bad, and he was working to deliver it without making it worse. There's a vehicle, your vehicle, Daniel's truck, on the footage from last night. They have a partial plate. She closed her eyes for 1 second. How partial. First 3 characters, Washington plates. They're running it. How long does a partial plate run take? Depends on how much they're paying for the service, Walter said. Could be 30 minutes. Could be 2 hours. It's been 40 minutes since that car left the street, she said. Sophie. I know. They're going to have his name, Walter said. And when they have his name, they're going to know he left town this morning, and they're smart enough to put it together. I know Walter. She kept her voice absolutely level. Is Ellison ready to file the moment he receives the document? He has been ready for 3 weeks. And if Daniel makes it there by 4:30, the injunction goes in before the court closes. Hale's restructuring motion gets frozen on filing. His attorneys can't do a thing until a full hearing is scheduled, which takes a minimum of 2 weeks. Walter paused. It works, Sophie. If Daniel gets there, it works. Then I need you to do something for me right now, she said. I need you to drive to Millhaven, not to find me. Don't look for me. I'll find you. I need you here because in the next few hours, there is going to be a 9-year-old girl who gets off a school bus at 3:15, and her father might not be home yet, and I need someone who can pick her up and bring her somewhere safe without scaring her. Silence. Walter Hayes, who had been Sophia's driver and security coordinator, and the closest thing to a steadying presence she'd had in her professional life for 11 years, was quiet for a long moment. You trust me with a child, he said. I trust you with everything, Sophia said. I always have. I was just too buried in my own company to say it clearly. I'm saying it now. All right, Walter said quietly. I'll leave in 20 minutes. His name is Daniel Brooks. Millhaven Elementary is on Oak Street. Her name is Lily. She has her mother's eyes, and she'll ask you approximately 40 questions in the first 5 minutes. Answer them honestly. She'll know if you don't. Understood, Walter said. The cat's name is Senator, Sophia added. He weighs 11 pounds, and he'll want to sit on you. A pause. You've become very attached to these people. They became attached first, she said. I was just paying attention. She hung up. She stood outside the laundromat on North Cascade and let herself have 10 seconds of something that wasn't strategy or calculation or forward momentum. Just 10 seconds of standing still and acknowledging that she was scared. Not of Marcus Hale, not of the legal outcome. She was scared that Daniel Brooks, who had turned his truck around in a storm and made her coffee and told her his wife's story at midnight in his kitchen, was now on an interstate highway with a target on his truck, and that she had put him there, and that the best she could do from here was trust him and move. 10 seconds, then she moved. She cut east toward the old part of Millhaven, toward a street she had memorized during her first week in town, because she had learned to always know her terrain. There was a church on Devlin Street, not the men's shelter, a different one, a small non-denominational building that unlocked its side door at 10 a.m. every day for community use. She had spent 3 days there 2 weeks ago, and the woman who ran the front desk, a retired schoolteacher named Doris, had never once asked Sophia for anything more than her first name. She went to the church. She went in the side door. Doris was at the front desk, reading glasses on a crossword puzzle, face down next to her coffee mug. Sophie, Doris said without looking up. You're back. For a few hours, Sophia said. Is the back room available? Always, Doris said. She went to and his voice had the particular flat quality it got when the news was bad, and he was working to deliver it without making it worse. There's a vehicle, your vehicle, Daniel's truck, on the footage from last night. They have a partial plate. She closed her eyes for 1 second. How partial? First 3 characters, Washington plates. They're running it. How long does a partial plate run take? Depends on how much they're paying for the service, Walter said. Could be 30 minutes. Could be 2 hours. It's been 40 minutes since that car left the street, she said. Sophie. I know. They're going to have his name, Walter said. And when they have his name, they're going to know he left town this morning, and they're smart enough to put it together. I know Walter. She kept her voice absolutely level. Is Ellison ready to file the moment he receives the document? He has been ready for 3 weeks. And if Daniel makes it there by 4:30, the injunction goes in before the court closes. Hale's restructuring motion gets frozen on filing. His attorneys can't do a thing until a full hearing is scheduled, which takes a minimum of 2 weeks. Walter paused. It works, Sophie. If Daniel gets there, it works. Then I need you to do something for me right now, she said. I need you to drive to Millhaven, not to find me. Don't look for me. I'll find you. I need you here because in the next few hours, there is going to be a 9-year-old girl who gets off a school bus at 3:15, and her father might not be home yet, and I need someone who can pick her up and bring her somewhere safe without scaring her. Silence. Walter Hayes, who had been Sophia's driver and security coordinator, and the closest thing to a steadying presence she'd had in her professional life for 11 years, was quiet for a long moment. You trust me with a child, he said. I trust you with everything, Sophia said. I always have. I was just too buried in my own company to say it clearly. I'm saying it now. All right, Walter said quietly. I'll leave in 20 minutes. His name is Daniel Brooks. Millhaven Elementary is on Oak Street. Her name is Lily. She has her mother's eyes, and she'll ask you approximately 40 questions in the first 5 minutes. Answer them honestly. She'll know if you don't. Understood, Walter said. The cat's name is Senator, Sophia added. He weighs 11 pounds, and he'll want to sit on you. A pause. You've become very attached to these people. They became attached first, she said. I was just paying attention. She hung up. She stood outside the laundromat on North Cascade and let herself have 10 seconds of something that wasn't strategy or calculation or forward momentum. Just 10 seconds of standing still and acknowledging that she was scared. Not of Marcus Hale, not of the legal outcome. She was scared that Daniel Brooks, who had turned his truck around in a storm and made her coffee and told her his wife's story at midnight in his kitchen, was now on an interstate highway with a target on his truck, and that she had put him there, and that the best she could do from here was trust him and move. 10 seconds, then she moved. She cut east toward the old part of Millhaven, toward a street she had memorized during her first week in town, because she had learned to always know her terrain. There was a church on Devlin Street, not the men's shelter, a different one, a small non-denominational building that unlocked its side door at 10 a.m. every day for community use. She had spent 3 days there 2 weeks ago, and the woman who ran the front desk, a retired schoolteacher named Doris, had never once asked Sophia for anything more than her first name. She went to the church. She went in the side door. Doris was at the front desk, reading glasses on a crossword puzzle, face down next to her coffee mug. Sophie, Doris said without looking up. You're back. For a few hours, Sophia said. Is the back room available? Always, Doris said. She went to the back room, small plain table and 4 chairs, and a window that looked onto the alley, and she sat down, and she opened her notebook to a clean page, and she started writing. Because whatever happened today, whether Daniel made it or didn't, whether the injunction filed or didn't, she needed the next sequence planned and on paper. She needed a decision tree. She needed contingencies. She needed to be, as she had always been, 3 steps ahead of whatever was coming. She wrote for 40 minutes without stopping. The clock on the church wall said 11:35 when her pen stopped moving, and she looked at what she'd written and felt for the first time in 6 months that she could see the shape of the thing clearly. She had a path. It was narrow, and it required Daniel arriving in Portland, and it required Lily being safe, and it required Walter getting to Millhaven in time, and it required Ellison filing the counter-injunction before 5 p.m., and it required Marcus Hale being exactly as arrogant as she knew him to be, which was very. Because arrogance was always his weakness, had always been his weakness, the precise blind spot she had overlooked for 6 years, because he'd kept it carefully aimed away from her. But she had a path. The door of the back room opened. She looked up. Not Doris. A man she had never seen before. 50s square-jawed, wearing a dark jacket that was slightly too formal for Millhaven. He stopped when he saw her. His expression did not change because he was trained not to let it change, but his right hand moved toward his jacket pocket, and she was already standing, already pushing back from the chair, already calculating the distance to the window. Ms. Reynolds, he said, I'm not here to hurt you. Everyone who says that is here to hurt me, she said. Mr. Hale wants to talk, that's all, a conversation. A conversation that ends with me signing over proxy control of my own company. She kept the table between them. Tell Marcus I said no. Tell him I've been saying no for 6 months, and I'm going to keep saying it until a federal court tells him I don't have to say it anymore. Ms. Reynolds, how did you find me? She asked. This building is not on any pattern you could have pulled from the footage. A flicker. Just a flicker in his professionally neutral face. Someone described you in the area, a local. She went through the list of people who knew her face in Millhaven, the grocery store manager, the gas station attendant, the people at the shelter, Doris. People who had seen her, but had no particular reason to describe her to anyone in a dark jacket asking questions. Unless someone had been asked very specifically. Unless someone had been shown a photograph. What did you offer them? She asked. The flicker again. Information carries a value. How much? She said. How much did Marcus Hale pay someone in this town to give me up, because I want to know exactly how cheap he thinks a human being's conscience is? The man said nothing. Get out, she said quietly. And tell Marcus that the next conversation we have will be in front of a federal judge. He looked at her for a moment. Then he stepped back. This doesn't have to be a war, Ms. Reynolds. It became a war the morning he filed this morning, she said. He chose the timeline, not me. The man left. Sophia stood in the back room of the church on Devlin Street and looked at the closed door and felt the very specific clarifying quality of knowing that all her decisions had now been made. There was nothing left to deliberate. The document was on its way to Portland. Walter was on his way to Millhaven. Lily would be safe at 3:15. And Marcus Hale had just told her through a man in a dark jacket that he knew he was losing because people who were winning did not send someone to ask for a conversation. They sent someone to announce a conclusion. I was scared. She had not let herself know that until right now. She had not let herself believe it because believing your enemy is scared makes you careless, and careless was the one thing she couldn't afford. But she let herself know it now, for exactly 5 seconds. Then her emergency channel buzzed again. She looked at the message. It was from a number she didn't recognize. It said, I'm here. Portland. Ellison's building. Daniel. She read it twice. Her hands were not shaking. She did not shake. But something in the room felt different, felt lighter, felt like the particular quality of air in the moment when a very long-held breath is finally released. She typed back on the channel. You need to be inside that office by 4:15. Hand the envelope directly to Ellison. Do not give it to anyone else. Say this is from a mutual friend who never forgot how to fight. She waited. 20 seconds. His reply came back, already walking in. I've got this, Sophia. She stared at that for a moment. Not Sophie. Sophia. He'd used her full name for the first time, and the thing that struck her, the thing she hadn't expected, was how natural it looked. How right it looked in this context, in this moment, when everything was either going to hold or break in the next 2 hours. She put the emergency channel device in her pocket. She picked up her notebook. She walked out of the back room through the church and stopped at Doris's desk. Doris, she said. Doris looked up over her reading glasses. I need to tell you something, Sophia said, and I need you to decide what to do with it. Doris set down her pencil. My name isn't just Sophie, Sophia said. My full name is Sophia Reynolds. I run a company called Reynolds Global Holdings. I've been hiding for 6 months because the people I trusted tried to take it from me. And this morning, I might have put someone in danger because I asked for their help. He helped me anyway. His name is Daniel Brooks. He lives on Millhaven Street. He has a daughter named Lily. Doris looked at her for a long, steady moment. The look of a retired schoolteacher who had seen decades of teenagers try to compress complicated truths into inadequate sentences and had learned to read what was underneath them. And what do you need from me? Doris said. Nothing, Sophia said. I just needed someone to know the whole thing. In case... She stopped. In case it matters later. Doris picked her pencil back up. You know what I know about people who run when they're scared, she said. Sophia waited. The ones who are actually brave, Doris said, are the ones who come back. Sophia looked at her. Then she put her backpack on her shoulders, walked to the side door of the church, and stepped out into the Millhaven afternoon, where the clock was ticking toward 5 p.m. in Portland, and a man in a 12-year-old truck was walking into an attorney's office with everything she'd spent 6 months trying to protect. And somewhere across town, a little girl with her mother's eyes was sitting in a classroom with no idea that the world was quietly, irreversibly shifting around her. And Sophia Reynolds, who had built a billion-dollar company from a rented desk and $40,000, and the absolute refusal to believe that the game was over before the last move was played, walked north through Millhaven and waited for the clock to reach 5. The clock on the church wall had said 11:53 when Sophia walked out. She knew because she had looked at it twice. The way you look at something when you are trying to anchor yourself to the present moment and stop your mind from running 6 hours ahead into outcomes you couldn't control yet. It was now 12:41. She knew this because Walter Hayes had pulled up alongside her on North Cascade in a rented gray sedan, driver's window down, and the first thing he'd said was not hello, or thank God you're alive, or any of the things a person might reasonably say after 6 months. The first thing Walter said was, "It's 12:41, and you look like you haven't slept properly since August." "October," she said. "I slept reasonably well in October." "Get in the car, Sophie." She got in the car. Walter Hayes was 61 years old, built like a man who had spent 30 years making sure other people were safe with gray at his temples, and a face that had learned to give away nothing unless he chose to give it. He had worked for Sophia for 11 years. He had driven her to 400 meetings, and 2 hospital visits, and 1 funeral, and he had never once asked her a question she didn't want to answer. He was in every way that mattered the most consistently reliable person in her professional life, and she had cut off contact with him in the first week of her disappearance because she couldn't afford to trust anyone, and she knew it had hurt him, and she had done it anyway because the alternative was worse. He didn't mention that now. He just drove. "Talk to me," he said. "Hale filed this morning, 8 a.m., King County Superior." "I know. That's why I'm here. Daniel is in Portland. He had the document. He messaged me from Ellison's building at..." She checked the emergency channel. 12:18. Nothing since. "No news is good news," Walter said. "Not in my experience." "In mine it usually is." He turned onto a quieter street away from the main drag. "What's the exposure on Brooks?" "Partial plate from Route 9 footage. They're running it. If they have his name, they know he left town. They're not stupid, Walter. They'll connect it." "Have they connected it yet?" "A man came to the church on Devlin Street. Looking for me, not Daniel. They knew I was in the area, but they didn't mention him specifically." She paused. "That might mean they haven't run the plate yet. Or it might mean they're being strategic about what they reveal." Walter nodded slowly. "Hale's always been strategic about what he reveals." "I know. I taught him." That landed in the car like a stone in still water. Neither of them said anything for a moment. "You couldn't have known," Walter said. "I knew he was ambitious," she said. "I told myself it was the useful kind." "Sophie." "It doesn't matter now," she said. "What matters now is that Lily Brooks is getting off a school bus at 3:15, and I need that child nowhere near this until it's resolved." "I'll get her," Walter said immediately. "I told you that on the phone." "I know. I'm confirming it." He glanced at her. "What do I tell her if she asks about her father?" "Tell her he's running an errand and he'll be home tonight. Don't lie about the errand being normal, she'll know. Just say it's important, and he asked you to pick her up." Sophia looked out the window. "She's 9, and she's sharp, and she has a way of looking at you that makes you feel like the truth is the only reasonable option." "She sounds like you," Walter said. Sophia opened her mouth to argue that. Then she didn't. Because she had been 9 once, and she had been exactly that child, the one who asked the question. Nobody else asked the one who looked at adults and somehow knew, without being able to explain how, when they were performing versus when they were real. "Don't let her be scared," Sophia said. "That's the only thing that matters. Everything else can be complicated. She cannot be scared." "Understood," Walter said. At 1:15, the emergency channel buzzed. "Daniel Ellison has the document. He's reviewing. Says 45 minutes to file once he confirms the notarization chain is clean. Sophia. It's clean. I had it verified 3 times. Daniel. He knows. He's moving. Also, his receptionist gave me coffee and a granola bar. First food since 6 this morning. She stared at that last line. Daniel Brooks, who had driven 3 hours on an empty stomach to hand-deliver an envelope for a woman he'd known for 18 hours, was sitting in an attorney's waiting room eating a granola bar and reporting back like it was the most natural thing in the world. She typed, "I owe you more than I know how to say right now." His reply came back in under a minute. "You don't owe me anything. Just make sure Senator is fed." She put the device in her pocket. She did not trust herself to respond to that. Walter had been watching her face. He said nothing, which was one of the things she had always valued most about him. They drove, she thought. At 1:47 she said, "Pull over." "Why?" "Because I need to think, and I can't think when things are moving." He pulled over. She sat in the parked car on a residential street in Millhaven, and she walked through the entire sequence from the beginning. Hale had filed at 8 a.m. That motion under Washington corporate law triggered a mandatory discovery period before any restructuring action could be finalized. But the emergency injunction, if Ellison filed it today before 5, would freeze the motion, entirely suspending all actions related to the restructuring until the court scheduled a full hearing. 2 weeks minimum. More likely 3. And in those 2 to 3 weeks, Sophia could file the primary suit, present the evidence of fraud and breach of fiduciary duty, and force the full board into a position where supporting Hale became legally and financially catastrophic for every one of them personally. She had the votes, if she had the time. She had known that for 3 months. 3 board members who had signed Hale's coalition had done so under what she believed was material misrepresentation, meaning they had been told things about her intentions and her mental state that were simply false. And when those falsities were exposed with documentation, at least 2 of them would reverse. She only needed 2. She had done this math 100 times in 100 different locations on the back of whatever paper was available. The math was right. The math had always been right. She just needed today to hold. "Walter," she said. "Yeah. If this works when this works, I'm going to need a full security review of every communication channel in the company before I go back in. Every system, every personnel file, every external contract signed in the last 18 months. "Already started," Walter said. She looked at him. "When did you start?" 3 months ago, he said simply. "When I decided you were going to win." She looked at him for a long moment. This man who had driven her to 400 meetings and never asked for more than a reasonable salary and the occasional decent cup of coffee. Who had started preparing for her return 3 months before she'd told him to. "Thank you," she said. And she meant it in the specific, complete way she rarely allowed herself to mean things, not the professional courtesy version, but the actual thing. "Don't thank me," Walter said. "Go back to your company and fire Marcus Hale so loudly they write about it in textbooks." She almost smiled. Almost. At 2:23 the emergency channel buzzed again. This time it wasn't Daniel. It was a number she recognized with a jolt that went from her eyes straight to her stomach. Marcus Hale's personal number. She stared at it. He had never in 6 months of this messaged her personally. He had used intermediaries. He had sent representatives. He had maintained the careful, plausible deniability of a man who never officially acknowledged that anything unusual was happening. The message said, "Whatever you've done today, it changes nothing. The motion is filed. The board is aligned. You've been gone for 6 months, Sophia. People move on. Call off your attorney, and we can negotiate something reasonable. You still have options." She read it 3 times, and she understood what it meant. It meant he knew about Portland. It meant the partial plate had come back. It meant he knew Daniel Brooks had driven that document to Richard Ellison's office, and he was scared enough to break 6 months of careful distance and message her directly. He was scared. She typed back 1 sentence. "The only negotiation I'm interested in is the one where you explain yourself to a federal court." She sent it. She put the device in her pocket. "Hale messaged me," she said to Walter. Walter's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Directly, directly. He's panicking, Walter said. Yes, she said. He is. She paused. Which means he's about to do something that isn't in the plan. Panicking people always do. What do you think he does? She thought about Marcus Hale. She thought about his specific brand of intelligence, fast, tactical, always looking for the pressure point. She thought about what she would do if she were him right now, with the injunction about to land and the evidence package already in an attorney's hands, and the one move she had built this entire 6 months around, finally about to execute. She thought about what pressure point was still available to him. And then she realized. Daniel, she said. Walter was already pulling back onto the road before she finished the word. She tried the emergency channel. No response from Daniel. She tried again. Nothing. Either he was still in the attorney's office with no signal, or, and this was the thought she locked down hard and fast before it could get traction, or something had happened between Ellison's building and wherever he was now. Millhaven Elementary is on Oak Street, she said to Walter. Go there first. Get Lily. What about Brooks? I'll reach him through Frank. She was already dialing the landline number she'd memorized that morning from Daniel's junk drawer business card. The payphone on North Cascade was 2 blocks behind them now. It didn't matter. She had Walter's cell. Frank picked up on the second ring. Yeah. Frank, it's Sophie. Have you heard from Daniel since this morning? He called me about noon. Said he was at some attorney's office in Portland, said to tell you. Frank paused. He said to tell you it was done. The thing you needed. He said it's done. The thing you needed. It's done. She closed her eyes for 1 second. He's on his way back, she asked. Should be. That was an hour and a half ago. If he calls you, tell him not to stop. Tell him to come straight back and call me through you the second he's in range. What's going on? Frank said. You're scaring me a little. I'm managing a situation, she said. Daniel is fine. I just need to reach him. She hung up. Walter was already on Oak Street, pulling up in front of Millhaven Elementary, which was a low red brick building with a covered entrance and a line of yellow buses just beginning to pull up for afternoon dismissal. The clock on Walter's dashboard said 2:58. You're early, Sophia said. Always better to be early, Walter said. I know. She looked at the school. I'm going to stay in the car. She doesn't know this car and she doesn't know you. If she sees me, she'll feel safer. Then come with me. Hale's people might be watching the school if they've ID'd Daniel. Walter looked at her. Sophie, I am not walking up to a 9-year-old girl I have never met and telling her to come with me without her father's friend being visible somewhere in the vicinity. She held his gaze. He was right, and she knew it, and she didn't like it, but she knew it. Fine, she said. I'll stay back, but I'll be where she can see me. They got out of the car. Sophia positioned herself near the corner of the school's front fence, far enough to be non-threatening, close enough that when Lily came through the double doors and her eyes were scanning for something familiar, she would find a face she recognized. She watched the doors. Parents were gathering. The buses lined up. Teachers appeared at the entrance, managing the organized chaos of 300 children transitioning from the inside world to the outside one. 3:19. Lily came through the doors in a cluster of 4th graders' backpack on lunch bag in hand, looking left and then right, with the systematic efficiency of a child who had done this pickup routine enough times to know exactly how to find her person in a crowd. She found Sophia first. Her face changed completely. Not fear, something more complicated than fear, something that was relief and confusion and 100 rapid-fire questions, all hitting at once, which was exactly what Sophia had expected. Lily walked straight to her, bypassing the other parents, moving with a directness that reminded Sophia for a sharp and unexpected second of herself at that age. You came back, Lily said. I did, Sophia said. Where's my dad? He's on his way home from an errand. He asked a friend of mine to pick you up. She gestured toward Walter, who was standing a respectful distance away, looking like exactly what he was, a professional man, trying very hard to appear unthreatening. His name is Walter. He's been my friend for a long time. He's going to drive us somewhere safe while we wait for your dad. Lily looked at Walter, then back at Sophia. Is my dad okay? Yes, Sophia said. And she said it the way she had said things to 3,000 employees in 12 countries. Not the automatic reassurance, but the grounded, evidence-based thing. He did something important today, something hard, and he did it really well, and he's driving home right now. Okay. Lily looked at her for a long moment with those brown eyes that read everything. Okay, she said. Then immediately, did Senator get fed? Sophia felt something crack open in the middle of her chest and seal itself back up in the span of about 2 seconds. I'll have Walter check. Lily nodded satisfied and walked over to Walter and said, Hi, I'm Lily. Sophie says you're her friend. Do you like cats? And Walter Hayes, who had not in 11 years of working for Sophia Reynolds shown obvious emotion in a professional context, looked for a moment like a man who had been handed something unexpectedly gentle. I do, he said. I have 2. What are their names? Lily demanded. Chester and Boo. Those are good names, Lily said with the authority of a child who had named her cat Senator. Okay, let's go. They were in the car and 2 blocks from the school when the emergency channel buzzed. Daniel. Coming through Miller Creek. Home in 40 minutes. Where are you? She typed back fast. Walter has Lily. We're safe. Come to? She looked at Walter. Where are we going? She asked. I booked 2 rooms at the Millhaven Inn on Route 7, Walter said. It's the only hotel in town that takes cash and doesn't have a camera on the parking lot. She typed the address to Daniel. Then drive straight here. Don't stop anywhere. Tell me when you're 10 minutes out. His reply. Copy that. Is she okay? She looked at Lily, who was in the back seat explaining to Walter with great seriousness why Senator's eating schedule was extremely important and should not be disrupted. She's perfect, Sophia typed. Hurry. At 4:51, her emergency channel lit up with a message from Walter's contact at the courthouse, a paralegal he had cultivated over years in exactly the way experienced security professionals cultivated contacts quietly and without drama in case they were ever needed. The message was 4 words, injunction filed. Hail frozen. She read it. Read it again. Put the device face down on her knee. Looked at the ceiling of the hotel room where Walter had installed her and Lily with Senator, who Walter had retrieved in the 12 minutes they'd been at the hotel before driving back to Daniel's house and collecting the cat because Lily had been correct that his schedule was important, currently making himself enormous in the center of one of the beds. 4:51, 9 minutes before the court closed. The motion was frozen. The restructuring was suspended. Marcus Hale, who had spent 8 years building his coalition and 4 months hunting her through 3 states, was now legally prohibited from executing a single element of his plan until the full hearing. And by the time that hearing happened, she would have the full evidence package in front of a federal judge. The testimony of 3 board members she knew would reverse, and a record that Marcus Hale's attorneys were going to spend the rest of their careers trying to explain away. She had a path. The path held. Senator purred. Lily was at the small table by the window doing homework with the easy, unself-conscious focus of a child who had processed the events of the afternoon and filed them away under complicated adult things that are apparently fine and moved on to math worksheets. She had asked 3 questions. Is Dad really okay? Is Senator really okay? And can we order pizza? And had accepted the answers to all 3 and returned to her regular operations. There was a knock at the door. Walter opened it. Daniel Brooks walked in. He looked exactly like a man who had driven 6 hours round trip on a borrowed favor and an empty stomach, which was to say, he looked tired in a bone-deep way, and his jacket was wrinkled, and there was a coffee cup ring on his sleeve that he hadn't noticed. He had the particular look of someone who had been running on adrenaline for 8 hours and was now very suddenly coming down from it. He looked at Lily first, always first. Hey, Bug, he said. Dad. She didn't run to him. She looked up from her worksheet, assessed him with those brown eyes, determined he was intact, and said, Senator is on the bed. He's fine. Walter has 2 cats named Chester and Boo. Good information, Daniel said. His voice was slightly hoarse. Then he looked at Sophia. She was standing near the window. She had spent the last 40 minutes sitting, then standing, then sitting again in the specific physical restlessness of someone whose body had been coiled tight for so long that the sudden absence of immediate threat felt almost physically wrong. He crossed the room. He stopped in front of her. He looked at her face the way he had looked at her in the parking lot the night before, steady, direct, no performance in it. "It's done?" he asked. "It's done," she said. "Injunction filed at 4:51. Hale's motion is frozen." He nodded. One slow nod. "Good," he said. "Daniel." She stopped. Started again. "I need you to understand what you did today. What it actually means. 6,000 people. Their jobs, their benefits, their retirement accounts. All of it was sitting on the line of whether that document made it to Portland. You had no reason to. You needed help," he said simply. "There are a lot of people who needed help, and I didn't turn my truck around for them." "I'm not a lot of people," he said. That landed so cleanly with so little drama that she almost missed how complete an answer it was. "No," she said. "You're not." "Are we going to be bothered?" he asked. "By his people. Is my house is Lily. Once the injunction is on record, Hale has no legal basis to pressure anyone connected to me," she said. "His attorneys will pull his people back immediately. Because the second they take any action against a civilian associated with an active federal injunction, they've crossed a line that ends careers." She paused. "You're safe. Lily is safe. Yes. We're safe." He exhaled. It was a long, slow exhalation, the kind that carries a lot of things with it. "I don't want money," he said. "I know that might be coming, and I want to say it now before it gets complicated. I helped you because it was right, not because of what you have." "I know that," she said. "I knew it last night in the parking lot. That's why I'm standing here." "Okay," he said. "Good." There was a brief silence. Walter was at the small desk near the door, reviewing something on his phone with the professional discretion of a man pretending not to be listening while absolutely listening. Lily looked up from her worksheet. "Are we getting pizza?" Daniel looked at his daughter. Something in his face shifted. The exhaustion was still there, but something underneath it was different. Lighter. "Yeah, Bug," he said. "We're getting pizza." "Can Walter stay?" Lily asked. "He wants to see Senator Moore, I can tell." Walter looked up from his phone. Yes, I would like that." "Sophie stays too," Lily said, already back to her worksheet. It wasn't a question. Daniel looked at Sophia. She looked at him. Neither of them spoke for a moment. "If that's all right," Sophia said carefully. "You saved my company," Sophia added. "You're giving that too much. You drove 3 hours into a situation you didn't fully understand, carrying a document for a woman you'd known for 18 hours on someone else's borrowed shift without eating breakfast, and you got it there 9 minutes before the window closed." She held his gaze. "That's what you did today. I want you to know exactly what it was." Daniel looked at the floor for a moment, then at her. "Claire would have done the same thing," he said quietly. The room was completely still. "Tell me about her sometime," Sophia said. "The whole story, not just the part where she grew up in foster care, the whole thing." "Yeah," he said. "Okay. A beat. You can tell me yours too, the whole thing, not the board meeting version." "The whole thing," she agreed. Lily said from the table without looking up, "I'm starving just so everyone knows." Walter laughed. It was genuine, and surprised the laugh of a man who had not expected to laugh today. Daniel put his hand over his eyes for a second, in the specific gesture of a father who was simultaneously exhausted and completely charmed by his own child. And Sophia Reynolds, who had spent 6 months being invisible, who had given away her food, and hidden in churches, and run from cars, and carried a document in a false-bottomed backpack for 63 days, stood in a hotel room in Millhaven, Washington, with a man who had turned his truck around, and a little girl who had made her a sandwich, and an 11-pound cat purring on the bedspread. And she felt something she had not felt in so long, she had almost forgotten the word for it. She felt found. Not by the company, not by the money, not by the position or the power, or the $4 billion that would be hers again in a courtroom in the coming weeks. Found by this room, by these people. Her emergency channel buzzed one more time. It was Walter's courthouse contact. Hale's attorneys filed a motion to contest. Judge denied it on first review. Injunction stands. Case proceeds to full hearing. She read it. Put the device in her pocket. Did not share it with the room because it could wait, because some things could actually wait, because not every piece of news needed to be announced the second it arrived. "Sophia," Daniel said. She looked up. "Pizza," he said. "What do you want on it?" She thought about the last time someone had asked her what she wanted on a pizza. She genuinely could not remember. "Whatever Lily wants," she said. "Everything," Lily said immediately. "Except mushrooms. Mushrooms are a mistake." "Mushrooms are objectively a mistake," Sophia agreed. And the conversation turned, and Walter pulled up a delivery app, and Senator relocated from the bed to Lily's lap, and Daniel sat down in the chair across from Sophia, and looked at her with the specific look of a man who had many questions, and understood that they were all going to be answered eventually, and that tonight the only thing required of either of them was to be present in this room and let the day be over. Outside Mill Haven settled into its evening. The court in Portland had a file with Sophia's name on it. Marcus Hale was on the phone with attorneys who were telling him things he didn't want to hear. Walter Hayes was ordering a large pizza with no mushrooms. An 11-pound cat named Senator was reorganizing himself across a 9-year-old's homework. And somewhere in the space between where Sophia Reynolds had been 6 months ago and where she was going next, there was this room, this hour, this small and specific and completely irreplaceable moment. She picked up Lily's note from her coat pocket. The one from the paper bag that morning. She had read it 4 times already. She read it one more time. Good people can have really bad luck and it doesn't make them less good. She folded it. Put it back. She was going to keep it for a long time. The pizza arrived at 6:43, and for approximately 90 minutes. Nobody talked about Reynolds. Global Holdings injunctions. Marcus Hale. Or the fact that one of the most powerful women in America had spent the previous night on a saggy couch in a 2-bedroom rancher with a broken heater and a cat named Senator. They talked about mushrooms. They talked about whether Chester or Boo was Walter's better cat, a debate Lily pursued with the systematic intensity she apparently brought to all important subjects. They talked about the cartoon bear on Lily's cereal box, which she defended as genuinely good branding, and Daniel said he was going to start buying the generic version just to watch her face, and Lily said she would put it directly in the trash without opening it. And Sophia said she thought the generic version was probably nutritionally identical, and Lily looked at her with the specific expression of a child who has been betrayed by an ally. It was the most normal 90 minutes Sophia Reynolds had experienced in 6 months. She watched Daniel across the pizza box. He had taken off his jacket. He was tired in a way that showed now that the adrenaline was gone. The specific hollowed-out exhaustion of a man who had run very hard on very little, and was now finally in a room where running was not required. He ate 2 slices without talking much, which she had come to understand was not distance, but the opposite. Daniel Brooks went quiet when he was comfortable, not when he was worried. When he was worried, he talked. He asked questions. He moved. Quiet meant safe. She filed that away. At 8:15, Lily fell asleep on the hotel bed with Senator arranged across her feet mid-sentence, about something to do with a science project involving the water cycle. One moment she was explaining the difference between evaporation and condensation with complete authority. And the next moment, she was simply gone, the way children went to sleep fast and total and without negotiation. Daniel covered her with the second blanket. He stood there for a moment, looking at her, and Sophia watched his face do the thing it did when he looked at his daughter. The thing she had no adequate word for, that particular quality of love, that was also a kind of grief. The love of a single parent who was always calculating what was enough and whether they were providing it. Walter excused himself quietly to his own room. The door clicked shut, and then it was just Sophia and Daniel, and the low hum of the hotel heater, and Senator, making small sleep noises at the foot of the bed. Daniel sat in the chair by the window. Sophia sat on the edge of the other bed. They were quiet for a moment, in the way of two people who have been through something together and are still processing the fact that it's over. "Tell me about her," Sophia said. He looked up. "Claire," she said. "You said I could ask. I'm asking." He looked at his daughter for a moment. Then he leaned back in the chair and looked at the ceiling the way people did when they were finding the beginning of a story they'd told internally 1,000 times, but rarely out loud. "She was the funniest person I ever met," he said. Which surprised people because she was also serious. Like genuinely serious about people, about fairness, about doing things right. But she had a way of finding the exact wrong moment to make you laugh. A funeral, a meeting at school, a doctor's appointment. She'd lean over and say one thing quiet just for you, and you'd have to physically bite your cheek to keep a straight face. Sophia smiled. She couldn't help it. "She grew up moving around a lot," Daniel said. "Different houses, different schools. She told me once that she got good at reading people fast, because when you're the new kid every year, you learn quickly who's safe and who isn't." He paused. She saw the best in people before she saw anything else, which got her hurt sometimes, but she never stopped doing it. "Lily has that," Sophia said. "I know." He looked at his daughter. "Scares me a little, and makes me prouder than anything." A beat. Claire died from a brain aneurysm. No warning. She was 31. Lily was 4. I was at the lumberyard when it happened. He said it the way people said things they had said many times, not without pain, but with the practiced evenness of someone who had learned to carry the weight without putting it down. I had 2 missed calls from the hospital by the time I got to my phone. Sophia said nothing. There was nothing to say that wasn't inadequate. "The first year I basically just kept the lights on," Daniel said. "Fed Lily, got her to school, kept the lights on. The second year I started remembering how to be a person again. Third year I figured out how to be a dad instead of just a guardian." He looked at his hands. "She's the reason I turned the truck around last night. But I think you know that." "She told me herself," Sophia said. "What if nobody helped Mom when she needed someone?" He looked up sharply. "She said that to you? In the truck on the way to your house?" He shook his head slowly. 9 years old, he said mostly to himself. "She knew what she was doing," Sophia said. "She was making an argument, a real one. She just made it in language that hit harder than logic." "She gets that from Claire," Daniel said. "I believe it." Sophia paused. "Can I tell you something?" "Yeah." "When I was in that parking lot last night before you came back, I had already decided it was fine. Sitting in the rain, giving the food away, watching your truck pull out of the lot. I had already accepted it. I was telling myself it was fine, because accepting things was what I'd been doing for 4 months. You learn to accept things when fighting them costs too much." He was listening the way he always listened, completely without filling the space. "And then your truck turned around," she said. "And I watched those headlights come back across the parking lot, and I thought that's either the best thing or the worst thing that has happened to me in 6 months, and I genuinely could not tell which." She looked at her hands. "It was the best thing. I know that now. But in that moment, hope was almost harder than the rain." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "Because hope means you have to risk something," he said. "Yes," she said. "Exactly." They sat with that for a moment. "Your turn," he said. She looked at him. "The whole story," he said. "You said you'd tell me, not the board meeting version." So she told him. The whole thing in the way she had not told anyone, not the strategic overview she'd given him at the kitchen table that morning, but the actual story. The $40,000 loan she had taken from a second mortgage on her mother's house in Spokane, and how her mother had handed her the check without asking what she would do if it failed, because her mother had always simply believed she wouldn't. The first office, the rented desk, the first 18-hour day, the first contract. The first year she had turned a profit and cried in her car in a parking garage because she had done it and there was nobody there to tell, and she had sat in that car for 20 minutes before she dried her face and went back upstairs because the work didn't stop for feelings. Marcus Hale, who had come to her through a recommendation, who had interviewed well, who had said all the right things about integrity and long-term thinking, and who, had she admitted this out loud for the first time, made her feel like less of a solitary figure. He was good at that. Making people feel less alone. It was, she said, possibly his best skill and the source of his worst behavior, because a person who understood loneliness well enough to weaponize it had learned that lesson somewhere dark. She told Daniel about finding the file, about the 48 hours of verification, about the specific cold clarity of understanding that the person she had promoted and defended and trusted had spent 18 months methodically removing her from her own life's work, and that he had done it carefully enough that she had not seen it coming. That's the part that broke something, she said. Not the betrayal, the competence of it. He was so good at it, which meant I had spent 6 years working closely with someone and had missed something essential about who they were. You didn't miss it, Daniel said. He hid it. There's a difference, she said. There's a big difference, he said. You can learn to read people better. You can't make someone be honest. She looked at him. You sound like Lily. She gets it from Claire, he said again. Which means she gets it from a woman who survived things that would have ended most people and still chose to believe the best first. He paused. I'd say that's a pretty good source. Sophia was quiet. Outside Millhaven was dark and still. The clock on the nightstand said 9:47. What happens now? Daniel asked. Now there's a hearing, she said. 2 weeks, maybe 3. I'll need to be in Seattle. I'll need to be visible, board meetings, legal proceedings, the whole machinery of it. I've been invisible for 6 months, and now I have to be the opposite. She paused. It's going to get loud, publicly loud. My name is going to be in the news. He nodded slowly. And us, he said. This situation. You, me, Lily. What happens to that? She held his gaze. What do you want to happen to it? I thought about that with the same physical thinking process she'd noticed before the stillness. The slight forward lean, the honest weighing of something. I want Lily to be okay, he said. That's always first. Whatever this is, whatever it turns into, she comes first. She should, Sophia said. She does. That's not negotiable for me either. And I want... He stopped. I don't want things from you, Sophia. I'm not built like that. I don't want things because of what you have. I know, she said. You told me this morning. I'm telling you again because I want to make sure you hear it, he said. Not as a disclaimer, as a fact. I help people because it's right, not because of what comes after. And whatever comes after that has to be separate from the reason I helped. I understand, she said. And she did. She understood it completely in the specific way you understood something that was both very simple and very rare. Okay, he said. Then what comes after can be what it is. What it is, she agreed. They were quiet again. Senator made a sound like a small, contented machine. One more thing, Sophia said. Yeah. The Scholarship Foundation, she said. I want to create it. Before you say no, let me tell you what it is, and then you can say no. She waited. He gestured with one hand, go ahead. It's not charity. It's not me buying something. It's a foundation established in Lily's name that guarantees her education through college, regardless of what happens economically, regardless of circumstance. It's fully independent of anything between you and me. If you walked away tomorrow and we never spoke again, Lily's education would still be funded. She paused. I would have done this for the child of anyone who did what you did today. I would have done it for Frank. I would have done it for Doris at the church. It's not personal. It's right. Daniel was very still. You said she gets it from Claire, Sophia said. A woman who survived hard things and still chose to believe the best first. I want to make sure whatever Lily inherits from her mother, whatever that capacity is, has room to grow. Has resources. Has a future that isn't limited by a broken heater and $63 until Thursday. She hadn't meant to say the $63. It came out because it was real, because she had been in his house, and she had seen the grocery receipt on the counter, and she had understood in the specific way of someone who had once structured a company's entire financial strategy exactly what that number meant and what it cost him to spend it on a rotisserie chicken for a stranger. Daniel looked at the floor. She deserves it, Sophia said simply. That's the whole argument. She deserves it. A long silence. You'd name it after her, he said finally. The Lily Brooks Foundation, she said. Unless she objects. Given the independent nature of her opinions, she may want input. Something crossed his face. Not quite a smile. Something more complicated and more real than a smile. Yeah, he said. She'll want input. Good, Sophia said. I'll schedule a meeting. He looked up sharply at that, and she held her expression straight for exactly 2 seconds before it broke, and it was the first time she had laughed. Really laughed. Not the small, careful version in longer than she could immediately calculate. And Daniel Brooks, who had driven 6 hours on a borrowed favor and an empty stomach, and was sitting in a hotel chair in Millhaven, Washington, at 9:52 at night, put his face in his hands for a moment, in the way of a man who had just discovered that the woman he'd pulled off a parking lot curb was among all her other qualities genuinely funny. Get some sleep, he said when he'd recovered. You look like you need about 3 days of it. 2, she said. I can work in a day. Not a healthy timeline, he said. I'm aware, she said. I'll work on it. Lily will tell you the same thing I just did, he said, and she'll be less polite about it. I know, Sophia said. I'm counting on it. She turned off the lamp on her side. He took the chair instead of the other bed, which she suspected was because the other bed was Senator's territory now, and the cat was not going to be moved without incident. She lay in the dark and listened to the room settle around her. The small sounds of other people breathing, the low purr of the cat, the distant sound of the highway. She was asleep in 4 minutes. The fastest she had fallen asleep in 6 months. She did not dream about Marcus Hale. She did not dream about board meetings or legal proceedings, or the next 3 weeks of her life that were going to be by any reasonable measure among the hardest and most visible she had ever navigated. She dreamed about a parking lot in the rain and headlights coming back across it, and a voice through a rolled-down window saying with complete and uncomplicated certainty, "Get in the truck." The next 3 weeks were exactly as loud as she had predicted. The injunction held. Hale's attorneys filed 4 motions contesting it. The judge dismissed 3 and scheduled a hearing on the 4th, which Ellison characterized as standard procedure and nothing to be concerned about, and which Sophia characterized internally as an annoyance she did not have time for, and which she did not share with anyone because she had learned that the specific texture of her worry was not useful information for other people. She was in Seattle by the following Monday. Walter had arranged temporary office space in a building on 2nd Avenue, 3 floors below a law firm she had worked with before and trusted, which meant she had legal counsel within elevator distance at all times, which was the kind of practical thinking she had always appreciated about Walter. The press coverage started on Wednesday. Not because she called anyone she did not call anyone, but because Marcus Hale's attorneys in filing their second motion had referenced her name in a public document, and a legal reporter at the Seattle Times had been covering the Reynolds Global Holdings restructuring story for 2 months and recognized the name immediately. The story ran, Thursday morning. Sophia Reynolds, missing CEO of Reynolds Global Holdings, had filed an emergency injunction through a Portland attorney, suspending the board's restructuring motion and signaling her intention to contest the entire proceedings. The reporter was careful with facts appropriately skeptical of both sides, noting that Reynolds Global's stock had dropped 14% in the 6 months since Sophia's disappearance, and had risen 6% in the 24 hours since the injunction became public. 6,000 employees. The story noted had gone to work that morning, knowing their company was no longer in free fall. Sophia read that line 3 times. She called Daniel from the temporary office on Thursday evening. Real phone his actual number, which Walter had obtained through Frank. The call lasted 47 minutes, which was longer than either of them had planned, and covered the press story, a detailed account of what Senator had done to Daniel's couch cushions in the 2 days since they'd returned home. Lily's current position on the Lily Brooks Foundation, she approved, with the condition that the logo include a cat, which Sophia had immediately agreed to, and a conversation that started as logistical and gradually became something else, the way conversations did between people who had been through something together and were figuring out what the after looked like. "How are you actually doing?" Daniel asked somewhere around the 30-minute mark. I'm functioning at about 90%, she said. That's not what I asked. She was quiet for a moment. I'm scared, she said. Not of Hale, not of the hearing. I'm scared of going back into a world that saw me as a title and a net worth for so long that I sometimes confused those things with myself. And I'm scared that the thing I found in the last 6 months, the thing that taught me the difference, is not going to survive contact with that world. A pause. It survived the parking lot, Daniel said. It survived a hotel room and 3 weeks of legal proceedings. I think you probably get to keep it. She thought about that. You're going to be fine, he said. And he said it not in the automatic way, not the comforting noise way, but the specific evidence-based way she had come to recognize as Daniel's version of a promise. I know, she said. I just needed to say it out loud first. Say it out loud whenever you need to, he said. That's what the call is for. She put the phone down after they hung up and sat in the temporary office on 2nd Avenue with her hands flat on the desk and let herself feel the specific unfamiliar warmth of having someone to call when she needed to say something out loud. It was such a small thing. Such an ordinary thing. The kind of thing she had not had in so long she had stopped noticing its absence, the way you stopped noticing an old ache until it was gone, and the absence of pain was itself startling. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. In those 3 weeks, Sophia worked. She worked the way she had always worked, early mornings, late nights, the particular focused intensity she had learned at a rented desk in Spokane, with 40,000 borrowed dollars and her mother's belief behind her. She reviewed every document Marcus Hale had touched in 18 months. She met with 7 board members, 4 of the original Coalition 3, who had stayed neutral. 2 of the 4 coalition members, when presented with the full evidence package, broke within 24 hours. One of them called her personally and said quietly that he was sorry, and she said she appreciated the call, and she meant it, and she hung up and moved to the next file, because she did not have time for the full weight of it yet. She had Walter. She had Ellison. She had on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Pacific time a phone call that lasted however long it needed to last. She had a note in her coat pocket that said, "Good people can have really bad luck, and it doesn't make them less good." She wore that coat to the hearing. The hearing was on a Tuesday in a King County courtroom that was smaller than people expected for a case this size, which was something Sophia had always found oddly comforting about legal proceedings. The human scale of them, the physical reality of a room with chairs and a judge and actual people making actual decisions. She sat at the plaintiff's table with Ellison on her left and Walter in the gallery behind her, and Marcus Hale sat at the defendant's table with 3 attorneys, and for the first time in 6 months, they were in the same room. He looked at her across the courtroom, and she looked back. He had prepared himself for something. A version of Sophia Reynolds that 6 months of hardship had diminished softer, less certain the version of a person that deprivation was supposed to produce. She could see him recalibrating when he looked at her, the small adjustment behind his eyes, the moment when he understood that the woman across the courtroom was not the one he had planned for. She had not been diminished by 6 months on the street. She had been clarified. She had spent 6 months without a title, without a company, without a net worth anyone could attach to her, and she had discovered, or more accurately been shown by a parking lot in Millhaven and a truck turning around in the rain, that what remained when all of those things were stripped away was still entirely her. Still the woman who had built Reynolds Global from $40,000 and a belief that you could do things correctly and still win. Still the woman who had survived things. Marcus Hale had never needed to survive because she had started with less and had always known how to make more from nothing. He had underestimated what 6 months on the outside would teach her. That was his final mistake. Ellison presented the evidence package in 3 hours. Bank transfers, board meeting recordings, employment contract alterations, proxy vote documentation. The kind of paper trail that only existed because Marcus Hale had been thorough enough to leave a record of every single thing he'd done, because thoroughness required documentation, and documentation was what the courtroom now had. When the judge called the recess and leaned back and looked at Marcus Hale's lead attorney with the particular expression of a federal judge who has read something they did not expect to read, Sophia felt Ellison exhale beside her. She did not exhale, Not yet. The verdict: formal restoration of Sophia's authority, suspension of all restructuring actions, referral of Hale's conduct to the State Attorney General for review of potential criminal charges, came 4 days later. Not in the courtroom. In a written decision delivered electronically to Ellison's office at 2:17 in the afternoon on a Friday. Sophia was at her desk on 2nd Avenue when Ellison called. He said 4 words: "It's done, you won." She sat with the phone in her hand for a moment. She thought about a parking lot in the rain. She thought about a woman who had not won anything for a long time sitting on a curb with a meal she gave away before eating it herself, and a man who turned his truck around because his daughter asked, "What if nobody helped Mom?" She thought about $63 until Thursday, and peanut butter and honey sandwiches, and a cat named Senator, who had chosen her without any of the context that most people required before choosing anything. She put the phone down. She did not call a press conference. She did not issue a statement through a publicist. She sent one message to Walter, who was down the hall, that said "it's done," and one phone call that she made herself without an assistant from her own phone. Daniel picked up on the second ring. "It's done," she said. "We won." A silence. Then, "Yeah," he said. And his voice had that particular quality she had come to recognize, the quiet one, the safe one. "I know." "You know," she said. "I had a feeling," he said. "About 4:17 this afternoon. I was cutting lumber at the yard, and I just had a feeling." She thought about that. 4:17, she said. "Give or take," he said. "The decision came through at 4:17, she said. Another silence, longer this time. "Huh," Daniel said. "Yeah," she said. "Lily's going to want to hear everything," he said. "She's been asking every day." "Tell her the cat on the foundation logo can be gray," Sophia said. "Like Senator. She'll want to know that too." Daniel laughed. That real laugh, the one she had first heard in the hotel room over the pizza. It was, she had come to understand, one of the best sounds she knew. "When are you coming back to Millhaven?" he asked. She had not said she was coming back to Millhaven. She had not said it because she had been afraid to presume, afraid to assume that a parking lot and a storm and 3 weeks of phone calls added up to permission to walk back into someone's life with that degree of certainty. But Daniel had asked. And Daniel did not ask things he did not mean. 2 weeks, she said. "I have board meetings and restructuring oversight to get through first. 2 weeks. "We'll be here," he said. 2 words, completely ordinary. The kind of thing anyone might say would say, was said 1,000 times a day between people who knew each other and expected to keep knowing each other. She had not had anyone say that to her in 6 months. She had not had anyone say it and mean it in longer than she could calculate. 2 weeks later, she drove herself to Millhaven in a